Okay, so hello and welcome to Are You Talking the DCEU to me? I don't know if we'll actually have like a name for this series or if it'll just be like we'll just have one of those really aggressively bad YouTube thumbnails where it's like honest reaction, the Batman.
Yeah, yeah. I think as aggressively clickbait as we can go, we should do it.
Yeah, we definitely should. Okay, so I guess we should introduce ourselves. I'm Zach Little. I mean, I'm gonna put this on my YouTube channel, so like probably you know who I am. Probably people know who we are, but you know, for new Batman fans who find us.
I'm Morgan Little. I'm his brother.
Yeah.
For people who are not aware, on your YouTube channel.
Yeah. So we wanted to talk about the Batman. And you know, I was thinking about how you and I are, what we're like. And I thought one thing to just mention, I think, to people to understand probably where we're going to come from about the Batman, but also like most things, is that you're kind of like the lore guy, you know? Like you tend to know a lot of the background material of like the comic books and that sort of thing. And I tend to not either not know or not really take it into account. Like I tend to just think of each thing as its own independent thing, and then you tend to think about it in its broader context.
I think, first of all, I like that cred. If I have that with you, then that's awesome. I love that. I am going to plug these in just because I feel like I can't. It's not as loud as it could be.
Okay. But I think you're like I would say this, it would even be true about you and history. Like there was some text thread with our family recently where like our mom was recommending some show and you were like, yeah, well, I'm like really interested in the Ottoman Empire or whatever it was.
I'll tell you what it was. This actually ties in kind of well, which is Mesopotamian history and Eternals. That's what it was.
Oh, right. Yeah. Eternals.
Because Eternals does a good job tying in like the Babylonians being really inventive, you know, and they kind of do the ancient aliens thing where it's like, no, it wasn't that they were inventive. It was that the Eternals were feeding it to them.
Yes, right. I know. There's a whole okay, one thing I want to talk about at some point is sort of the politics of Batman, because I feel like this movie has slightly sharper politics than say the Christopher Nolan ones did. But Eternals is another great example of how fraught trying to explain superheroes in a political context is. Like the whole thing, they were like, yeah, I mean, the Eternals sort of caused Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, man, you really, if you start to pursue these rabbit holes, you really fall down them, and maybe you just shouldn't. But I think that what the Batman does is kind of interesting, but we'll get into
it. So yeah, like I said, I really enjoy your that you think that I am the lore person, and I want to just perpetuate that as much as possible. But no, as far as Batman's politics go, I don't really believe that anything is very like, I don't think that they're getting, it's kind of like corruption's bad and politics are bad, right?
Well, yeah, but then like the Riddler's followers are kind of like this, some combination of like incels and like militia wannabes. You know, there's that kind of like, they're somewhere between like Gamergate and January 6th, you know, like that's the vibe.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. I hadn't really considered that.
And then there's a moment when a police officer gets killed and Jim Gordon tells that to Batman, and Batman says he was a cop. And I think what he means is that's a risk inherent to the job, but it comes off as, and I think they intentionally allowed this to play out this way, but I think it also comes across like, hey, who cares, just like another cop died. And I think that had to occur to them, how it was going to sound, and I think they were fine with that. So that's interesting. And this idea of the fact that, I mean, this is how it always happens, right? In a super villain and this is very true of a lot of Batman villains, has a good point and eventually goes too far. The Riddler is killing a bunch of corrupt politicians. Not necessarily the most morally correct thing to do.
No.
But there's a world in which you could see where he's coming from. But then he just starts, mass murder, mass destruction, at which point you can no longer sympathize. And, at this point, that's like, this has become a convention of modern superhero movies because every villain, it's the Killmonger effect, right? Every single villain starts out from a place where you're like, I kind of agree. And then you're like, oh, well, I guess I can't follow you all the way down, Paul Dano.
Yeah, well, I think right around the Killmonger Thanos time period,
right,
of Marvel of comic book movies in general, they were like, oh, the villain needs to be just as captivating as our heroes, and he needs to have a reason behind it. That and even to a certain extent, Zemo, like when in Zemo and Civil War, you're like, I would probably feel the same way about Avengers.
This whole wave would have started earlier if like the Occupy Wall Street ethics or whatever of The Dark Knight Rises made any sense. Remember, like Bane's like whole Occupy Wall Street riff was like, I was like, what is this? What are we saying here?
I left the theater after The Dark Knight Rises being like, well, that was a piece of trash that I'm never going to watch again. And the longer that time has gone on, I didn't think this was possible. I hate it more.
Have you actually gone back and watched it again?
Pieces, not like full.
Because I have tried to watch it again, and honestly, I get so hung up on the ADR sound of Bane's voice that I can't. I just can't get into it because it's so distancing to me. It sounds like those episodes of Arrested Development when like David Cross was sick or something, and so they had to dub all of his lines, and it just sounds so fake.
It's the front to back. That movie is just an absolute train wreck, and it's very clear that so like the idea was the third movie was supposed to be the things that went on with the trial of the Joker,
right?
So they had to scrap everything and presumably everything. I don't really know what was there and what wasn't, but you went from the most captivating villain that's maybe ever been on screen with the Joker, and then you turned to, and I mean, Tom Hardy's an excellent actor, but holy crap, is Bane the worst villain?
I think Tom Hardy is he's almost too interesting of an actor. The choices that he makes are always like too complicated by half. Like I just watched Venom, Let There Be Carnage, and I mean, you literally can't understand what he's saying.
Yeah, I know. What's up with that? What's up with his voice in Venom?
I don't know.
So you still have not seen the first Venom movie?
No, I just thought it would be kind of fun to see Venom, Let There Be Carnage. And also I knew I was going to watch Spider-Man No Way Home. And I knew from listening to the film cast that there was some kind of tie-in between Let There Be Carnage and No Way Home. And I thought, oh, well, I want to see that in the order that people saw it. Like people saw Venom, Let There Be Carnage, and they saw No Way Home. So
that's
I thought,
so funny.
I thought I want to kind of recreate this.
At first, as you were saying this, I was like, oh my God, I can't believe he saw that scene without seeing No Way Home. And then I was like, oh my God, that actually did happen for people, which is very interesting.
And it's such a fake out. If I hadn't seen the Venom movies and I only saw that No Way Home scene at the end and I like reverse engineered it, I would have been like, oh my God, what a cop out. But when you actually watch the Venom movies or this Venom movie, you kind of feel like it's in the spirit of Venom to like to do this incredibly cheap fake out thing. You're like, I don't know why I let Venom get away with this, but for some reason I do.
You should see the first one, even though I think the second one's better than the first one.
I will watch the first one because I mean, I really love Carnage, and so I just thought it would be fun to see a cinematic depiction of Carnage, which 8-year-old Zach would not have imagined were possible.
I know,
but and it sort of isn't.
Right. Right.
But it's still like, it's, it's fine. It was fine. I thought Woody Harrelson was clearly having fun. Everyone, every single person in Venom Let There Be Carnage is having a great time.
Yeah. The
Something you cannot say for No Way Home, by the way.
Yeah, no.
I just mean some of the villains who are clearly completely CGI'd in.
No Way Home is a whole other thing, and obviously that'll be episode 2, I guess.
Yeah, I think we should do No Way Home for our second episode.
So
yeah.
I don't even want to talk about it at all. So
well, go ahead.
Along with I've got a great transition.
Okay.
Along with strange acting choices, let's talk about Robert Pattinson playing Batman and also Bruce Wayne, most importantly.
So I would say that one thing that this movie does, and I do want to just sort of talk about the movie generally at some point, but I'm totally fine with doing that somewhere in the middle of this.
Sure.
I think that one thing that the movie has to deal with that they do a pretty good job with is like, we know a lot now about how urban spaces and communities can be improved, right? We know how to solve a lot of our problems societally. We just don't want to. But we know how to do it. And we know the answer is not punching and kicking. So that's a problem for Batman, right? Because Bruce Wayne wants to fix Gotham City, and he does it by beating people up, which won't work. And some other movies have tried to reckon with this idea, right? That introducing a superhero actually makes things worse because the crime levels up. But what they do instead here, right, is Bruce Wayne is young and angry and not doing anything for the community yet. Like you really get the sense that Bruce Wayne is 100% absent from the philanthropic community in Gotham City. Like people don't see this guy. He's just holed up somewhere. So Robert Pattinson is kind of the perfect choice to play like aggressive weirdo Bruce Wayne.
Yeah. Well, and I thought that, okay, so first of all, it's like, okay, so we know from his acting choices that he's like, I do weird guys. Like,
yes.
Like, have you ever seen The King?
I haven't seen The King, no.
Watch it. It's great. So it is very clear that he was like, I'm going to play Batman straight as hell. Like, it's Batman. But where I'm going to get my, where I'm going to make my meal is Bruce Wayne. And oh my God, is he unbearable? Like,
really? I love it.
Oh,
I love Moody.
I hate him so much.
He's Bruce Wayne.
He's awful to Alfred the whole time. And then Alfred almost dies. And he wakes up and the first thing he says to him, he's like, oh, so you've been lying to me my whole fucking life, you piece of shit. Like,
hey, you know.
He is, it's over the top brooding performance out of him. It was like he was channeling, it was like he was like, every single person who ever knocked me playing Batman because I played Edward Cullen, guess what? I'm bringing Edward Cullen to this party.
Yes, I did enjoy that. He also was Bruce Wayne so little.
Yeah.
In this movie. Like,
yes,
minute for minute across this 7-hour movie. I mean, he is in the bat suit almost the entire time, which I thought was such an interesting and kind of cool choice.
Same.
That Batman is sort of his primary identity. It feels like he's putting a suit on, and his personality does go up a few notches when he becomes Bruce Wayne.
Yeah. He is, first of all, him as Batman is like, this is everything I have wanted from a Batman movie for so long. He's not big, like bloated Ben Affleck. He's this young, hot, just absolute ass kicker. And so there's that. Which
don't you think, by the way, just to throw this in here, I heard someone say this recently and I found myself surprisingly agreeing. Don't you think Ben Affleck is actually kind of the best Bruce Wayne though?
Yes, I do. I think he's an incredible Bruce Wayne. And I honestly, I don't fault Ben Affleck at all for that franchise. I think that he plays it well. I like him as Batman in general.
Yeah.
I like that he's like old and jaded and like brutal because he's like, you know, I've been working my whole career at this and nothing's changed. So now I
Yeah.
just am now I use drones and
Yeah, it's not even separating Bruce Wayne's and Batman, which is like a totally different calculus, where he probably ends up on the top of the list. He's still at the top, toward the top of the list of Batman.
I think that the reason that Christian Bale is looked at so well is because he can play both very well. I think that Ben Affleck has an excellent Bruce Wayne, and I think that Robert Pattinson has like the Batman down so well. Okay, so as far as things that I really wanted from Batman movies, right? A, he's supposed to be a detective, and
Right.
B, he's supposed to be a genius. And you get that from this movie so hard up. They don't exactly play out his brilliance, but the things that he does, you're like, boy, you and Alfred are really cooking up some shit in this
Yeah,
Batcave. Like,
I think he's kind of like, he's like a STEM major genius in this movie, where like his innovations are clearly about the way that he, with very little material, seems to have created all of the bat technology. But in terms of his genius, in terms of like solving crimes, he really just takes L after L in this movie.
yeah.
Like he actually
well,
stops literally zero of the Riddler's plans. Like the Riddler's plan is carried out exactly as intended, except for he doesn't kill Bruce Wayne.
And we'll talk about that in a little bit, but that's a great whole thing. Okay, wait. So let's talk about the fact that he gets his ass kicked so aggressively in this movie. And let's talk about the flying scene.
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh, I loved when he goes up to the top of the building and goes like, ah, like I was
Yeah.
like, I love this. I love that Batman
And
is afraid of this height and afraid to
the
fall.
the expansion of the suit, I was like, holy shit, that's how you would do it.
Right.
Like this is how you would do it. It wouldn't be some military fabric that we figured out can, if you
Nanotechnology.
like, yeah, like it wouldn't be that. It would be like the suit blows up and like maybe you're not even able to fight after that point. You know, maybe the suit is just blown out or whatever. I don't really remember how he lands, but
Hard.
when he lands, I thought it was such a great choice. Like, as far as a person making a movie about this guy, you're about to be like, yeah, and then he gets fucking, he just crashes.
He rolls like a whole city block.
Yeah. I was laughing about that for so long.
Yeah.
It was like, because that's how it would go down, man. Not every move would be flawless. Like,
right. I know. I do like that. I like the fact that he makes these mistakes, and yeah, it felt right. It felt right that Batman
yes
would be, you know. And I did also hear someone say that in terms of this movie sort of being noir-ish, like the detective missing every clue and screwing it up is actually kind of like a story convention of a lot of like film noir. Is like they do get it wrong. They do have the wrong hunch.
Sure.
And that does normally make for, I mean, it makes for a better story than like, you don't really want Batman to have figured out the entire thing and be one step ahead of you. You want to be with them, right there with him. And I did feel, to maybe talk a little bit just about the overall movie for a second, I felt swept up in this movie in a way that I have not for a very long time. Like I was thinking about it, I was like, I don't think I've felt this absorbed by a movie since like I was a kid, like since like the 90s. And I mean, I saw the Batman in an empty theater by myself in Wells, Maine on like a Friday afternoon. And I went back to work afterwards. Like there's no reason it should have completely carried me away, but it totally did. I felt, and it was, you know, huge credit goes to the score, the Michael Giacchino score, who, by the way, also like, we'll talk about Spider-Man No Way Home, but Michael Giacchino did the score for that movie too. So
Really? That's
strange
funny.
yeah, because it's not nearly such a presence.
Yeah.
The score in the Batman is a huge part of the movie, and I think
I
that's
feel
one
like
reason it works so well in terms of like sweeping you up.
I feel like you could tell me that all of the Marvel movies have had the same score this whole time, and I wouldn't have noticed. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, they
They
definitely
all
do integrate themes. They use the
well, right,
same.
but I mean, like you could tell me that like the scene where he's running down the street, it's like, oh yeah, they've used that piece of music 10 times in the last 5 years, and I would be like, oh really?
Like they have this stock library of music for just different action pieces, like a cooking show. Like they have the
Yeah.
different
Yeah.
musical cues.
So as far as overall, I think that one of the main reasons why it's so captivating, and I totally agree with you, I felt the exact same way, was the world building that was done within this movie. I think it plays off of, we all know Gotham, we all know the story, but we're creating a new version of it for this. And they just do such a good job with like all these different like just introducing you to the new Gotham of this franchise. Like they just do a great job of that, and like you really like the characters. I thought the acting performances were awesome through all of it.
There were so many people in this movie that I didn't know were going to be in it. Like I didn't know John Turturro was in it.
Who's awesome in it.
Yeah, I know. He's great. I actually don't even think I knew Jeffrey Wright was going to be playing Jim Gordon. And I loved that. I love that partnership, Batman and Jim Gordon.
Me too. I thought that they played that out perfectly. And I really like that we did not bother with any. Okay, so let's talk comic, relation.
Yeah.
I really like that he mentioned that he was 2 years in.
Yes.
Because one of the most famous Batman runs is year one.
Right.
And you're dealing with all the setup of it. But what I like about this movie is we do year one, except it's year two. And so all this stuff is already established. We've got the bat light, that the bat signal's up. I'm buddies with Jim Gordon, like we trust each other already.
Right. And Jim Gordon's trust of Batman is sort of like, it's not popular among the police department, but it's like tolerated. Yeah. Everyone's like, this is strange, but it's working, so I guess I shouldn't say anything.
When you have like I think that you have like kind of a Hydra situation with yes, they're all kind of corrupt,
right?
But you have this, some aren't, and some are happy about Batman doing the crime stuff, but Batman has not been a thorn in like mob activities really at all.
No, they've clearly managed to press on despite him or around him or through him or whatever.
So it's kind of like he's killing all the weirdos that dress up in costumes. So let him keep going.
This is actually like a funny litmus test for superhero stories, because there are a lot of times, and I guess one thing I can think of here is like Batman versus Superman. There are these stories where they only make sense one way, right? If you're trying to explain a plot beat in Batman versus Superman, someone can say, well, why wouldn't this happen? Or why wouldn't this happen? Or why wouldn't this happen? And you're like, well, I don't know. There's only one way in which this story makes sense. Whereas when you think through the story points in this movie, with a few exceptions, for the most part, there's a lot of ways in which each thing could work, or why it would be happening, or why a character would behave the way that they would behave. You can come up with a few different reasons. And that's, I think, a sign of like a strong story.
Yeah.
When there's really like multiple justifications.
I really like the way that he's solving the riddles, but like often he goes down the wrong rabbit hole.
Mhm.
And like that's what would happen. You'd be like, oh yeah, it's a penguin that he's talking about.
Right.
And it's
I've
like,
heard a lot of people complain about that El Rata
yeah,
plot beat, but I guess I felt like it. I know that the switch from the Penguin to Falcone happened fast, but it didn't feel that fast to me. And I really did enjoy Colin Farrell lecturing them about like Spanish grammar.
yeah, that was great.
It's like it's worth it. It's that slightly weird walk is worth it for me for that stop on the trip.
I loved what they did with the penguin, and I loved Colin Farrell as the penguin.
You know what's a
I thought
funny
it
thing
was,
about the Penguin one is that people initially sort of were complaining about the fat suit thing, which I totally understand. Like this idea, the Jared Letoization of acting, right? That everybody wants to have this thing. But I just think there's something so like charming and winning about Colin Farrell's performance. People were like, this guy gets a pass.
yeah. Well, and also it's like with this from an actor that we've never seen it before. There's a couple of reasons why it works, but the Jared Leto thing drives me insane because I literally watched a trailer for a movie from him last night. I can't remember anything about it, but where he plays like a European guy, and like there's something different in his face.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there with Sarah, and she's like, "Why can't this motherfucker ever just be Jared Leto?" Like,
yeah, I know.
and it's like, yeah, why can't he be? He's a gorgeous man. Just you can be a gorgeous man every once in a while. You don't need to always look weird.
I was so worried it was going to be him, by the way, you know, at the scene at the end when, do you know who it is?
I know the actor, but who is he?
It's Barry Keoghan. He was in Eternals. He's the guy who mind controls people.
Oh, Druid.
Druid. I think it's Druid, which is funny. But yeah, it's Barry Keoghan, and I think
cool.
I think that'll work.
Cool. Let me ask, why? Why for any of that?
The one scene I would have cut from the movie is that Joker scene.
I would have cut plenty because it's 3 hours and it is too long. All right.
Yeah,
straight up,
but I guess I guess I liked being in it, like you say. Like I liked being in Gotham, and I liked that switch from, you know, I love Christopher Nolan. I think Tenet rules.
Yeah, me
but
too.
I guess and at the time, right, when Gotham City was just Chicago, like I did like that at the time. But now that we're back to like, I think they shot a lot of the Batman in Scotland. Now that we're back to like dirty Gothic Gotham, I'm like, oh, I do miss this.
Yeah.
Not too long ago, I rewatched the Michael Keaton first Batman.
Yep.
And you know, that's all like these crazy painted backdrops, and I love it.
Yeah, me too.
So I guess it was nice to have that back and but almost a mix, right? Like it's sort of a mix between the Nolan modern urban Gotham and the like.
I think it's like there's kind of an intersection where it changes, which is Batman Begins has that.
You're right. It's
dirtier.
Looking back, it's got like a more Gothic vibe. Yeah.
And then we kind of switch in 2 and 3.
Right. It's the IMAX thing. It's like once Christopher Nolan discovered he could shoot things in IMAX, he wanted more clean silver tones.
That's actually true, where literally The Dark Knight is the starting point of the Christopher Nolan look.
Yeah, that's true.
And ever since, every movie he's made has looked the exact same.
Right. It's cleaner. It's like, I mean, there's a little bit of dirtiness in parts of Interstellar, but that's in order to kind of establish all these different locations,
worlds and stuff. Yeah. Anyway, what I was going to say is Zoe Kravitz is the greatest Catwoman that has ever been put to film.
Oh yeah.
And their relationship is so fucking hot, and it's the highlight of the movie is this relationship between these two.
I think my absolute favorite sequence was them going on that motorcycle ride at the end. I was like, this is beautiful. Like this is like the most beautiful romantic moment I've seen in a movie in so long.
It's like they were like, well, we want her to leave Gotham, but how do we still get them to ride off into the sunset? And they were like, actually,
It's so funny. It's like you know they're going to do it. Like what I love about that sequence is so satisfying. And you're like, I can see them. I can see in my head the point where the motorcycles split and go in different directions. But you're just kind of like, it doesn't quite happen right when you think it's going to, and you're like, oh,
Yeah.
not. And then they split, and you're like, okay, they did it.
They're so great together. And what I think is really cool is that they kind of they captivate a very great aspect of their relationship in the comic books too, which is that they're like, we're both just doing our thing. Mm-hmm. And I'm not worried about the fact that you're breaking into people's Batman's above this, all right, lady. So you keep doing you and I'll keep doing me. And
I actually love that about like every crime story. I love all kinds of crime stories where it's like, I'm the lawman, right? But I'm actually focused on this thing right now. So I actually don't care about these other crimes that are happening. Like that's such a great thing that, I mean, it's true, right? Like there are in fact police officers who are assigned to a certain kind of beat. And so who literally a different kind of crime could happen right in front of them. And they're like, I don't care.
yeah, not my problem right now. I'm not filling out that paperwork. I loved the scene where she wears the contact lens and goes through like when they introduced the contact lens right at the beginning that he has that, I was like, yes, fucking yes. Like he's got contact lenses, he gets to watch everything he just did.
And I've heard people say that one is like a little bit too technologically advanced compared to the rest of it, but I don't really think so. Like you can buy that stuff. Like anybody, I don't know about exactly contact lenses, but spy cameras. I mean, John Wilson uses the glasses cameras a lot in the first season of How To with John Wilson. I don't think as much in the second season of that show, but I remember in the first season having the glass. I just feel like it gets ethically tricky. So that show became too much of a hit for them to do that kind of thing.
Yeah, probably. I want him to make that show forever. Because it's like, it doesn't cost them anything. It's like, like that's chump change to HBO.
Yeah, it costs the amount, it costs the cost of like 6 Sony camcorders. So now, wait a minute. Okay, Catwoman, yes. I loved every moment that Zoe Kravitz was on screen.
Same.
Absolutely perfect. MVP of the movie.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then Paul Dano also, I think, was great. I love that it was so long before we saw him, like actually saw his face.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I love that he did not get like jacked or anything. Like he just still looks like himself. He still looks like the guy from Little Miss Sunshine. Yeah. And it just made him scarier, I think.
I agree. I think that the mystery behind him was, everything. I loved his voice and how because it was so purposeful that he was like doing I'm a villain voice.
Yeah.
His setups to murder people are absolutely horrifying.
It's very Saw, which it was an unexpected.
Yeah.
I was thinking, so people talk about Seven, right? A lot of this movie feels like Seven in a way.
Interesting.
And
sure.
I mean, not nearly as gory, but like the some of the imagery. I also obviously thought of True Detective when Bruce Wayne broke out the spray paint and created like an obsessive mural on the floor.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, it's like some Rust Cole shit. I love it.
Yeah.
And then, Saw was like, I was like, I can't believe the Saw movies have been around so long that they're cinematic references now.
Yeah, there's a lot of, I feel like there's a couple of things I can't think of anything right now, but I feel like there's a couple of things with his crimes and everything that strikes me as like a couple of different like serial killer horror stuff.
Yeah.
How great is it that Peter?
Yeah, go ahead. I think you were going to talk about the same thing I was going to talk about, Peter Sarsgaard.
How great is it that he shows up to be like brutally murdered?
Yes, and he's a great like kind of smarmy. He's so good at that.
Yeah.
He's not always that guy. Like Peter Sarsgaard can play like an upstanding citizen, but he's right on that line.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I was surprised he wasn't Harvey Dent. Like when they started to
I know. Actually,
he'd make a good Harvey Dent.
It's too bad Harvey Dent wasn't introduced. but save it, I guess.
Yeah, they got plenty of time for
See,
that.
that's my issue with the whole Joker tease. Is like, what? There are so many awesome Batman villains that have never been put to screen. What are we doing?
And they also
here?
already give you this feeling that like Colin Farrell Penguin is kind of like a long haul villain, right? Like he's just in it. Like he's just around, he's part of the story, and then he kind of steps into his power toward the end. Like you really feel like when Turturro goes down, you're like, oh, okay, well, the Penguin's going to fill that void. And that's why he's here, to show you his like ascension in the crime world of Gotham. But, you know, I kind of like this idea that he could sort of be a background element for like a couple of movies.
That's what I was going to say, is I think that would be great too. I wouldn't even make him a big villain in the future. I would just keep him as part of the Gotham,
which would be cool.
Lineup.
It would be cool to do that with Harvey Dent too. Like it'd be great to just have Harvey Dent be Harvey Dent.
I think they probably will. I would have a whole movie with Harvey Dent being Harvey Dent. I would not. I would not do that. And, you know, even if you wanted to, you know, it would be kind of fun is like we teased in this one, like some setup at the end is maybe you could show the courtroom thing happening right at the end of a movie. And you're like, you leave it as like, oh, maybe Harvey Dent's dead, you know, or something like that.
Yeah. It'd be cool if you could actually get away with that. Like if people might actually believe that for a second.
Right. Like people who aren't, but some other villains that, I mean, so here's my concern. We did a little too much secret organization happening in this movie to pull off a Court of Owls as the next thing. But have you ever read anything with the Court of Owls?
No.
It's so awesome. And it's like an early Batman story, usually like, you know, early when he's younger, because it's this organization that's like an eyes wide shut thing. Like they all go to meetings and they wear owl masks. It's incredible. It's so much fun. But Court of Owls would be dope with this Batman. Another thing that I thought was at the beginning of the movie, the young black kid that is like clearly not cool with what's going down with the gang.
Oh yeah.
Okay. I think that's a Robin.
Interesting.
I think that's Tim Drake, because Tim Drake was like kind of known as a street kid, you know. When Batman finds him in the comic books, he tries to take the rims off of the Batmobile, like steal the rims off the Batmobile. Okay. And so I was like, yo, I wonder if they're teeing that up as a Robin.
That is a deep cut prediction, and you will be. This is the kind of bet that will really pay off if you're right.
See, this is why I'm throwing it out on video right now.
Yeah. Speaking of the Batmobile, by the way, I feel like the Batmobile didn't register as much to me as it clearly has for other people in reading other people's reactions to the movie. I'm not like a car guy, so that's probably part of it. But
I think it's the coolest Batmobile that's ever been on screen. Well, I don't know. Christian Bale's was pretty dope. And I liked the idea of it being a tank, you know?
Yeah, that's true. I guess I just feel like I didn't get too good of a look at it because that car chase scene was mostly close-up images, which I thought was cool. I mean, that whole sequence when the car goes over the fire and when you see when Batman comes walking toward him upside down. And I can't remember if it actually happens in the movie or if it's just in the trailer, but that score, that like that Batman theme, the like bah, bah, thing happening as he's walking toward out of the flames, it's like, yeah, this is cool.
Okay, so the lead up to what I found troubling about that whole thing was the lead up to the reveal of the Batmobile being there and ready to go was like he ends up on the ground because he's like in the process of getting his ass kicked left and right at this point in the movie, right? And then he shows up to that scene. He gets shot or something and falls on the ground. I like missed it or something. I like looked up and all of a sudden he's on the ground and I'm like, okay, he's on the ground, whatever.
He gets shot, he goes down, and then he's kind of like on the ground behind Catwoman, and then she goes to look for him again and he's gone.
Okay, so Catwoman and Jim Gordon are both like concerned for him, and all of a sudden he's like, no, fuck you guys, I'm gonna hop in my car, I hope you guys got a ride, right? Like
Yeah.
But that being said, I think the car is incredibly cool, and I think it's awesome that they were like, you know, this is something that he made,
Right.
as opposed to you're a rich businessman who can walk into his military facility and go, do they make it in black?
Right.
You know, I really like that you see the car being built ahead of it too. Like he's got the engine out and he's doing stuff with it before that, you know. So I really liked that. As far as the mechanics of everything in the movie is awesome. I love that his batarang is the thing that he can remove out of it, or he pulls it out, right?
He pulls it off of his chest plate. Yeah.
So cool.
Yeah.
Let's talk about, I mean, okay. I think one of the main issues when you're writing and telling a story is, if you have to be if you're writing a movie about a musician, the songs need to be good, right? If you're doing the Riddler, the riddles need to be like good, and like they were.
Yeah.
You know, there's silly stuff that you can pick apart, but if you're a fucking terrorist who's sending Batman letters, like he did a pretty good job with it.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
is it supposed to be a punchline that the Joker has 500 followers? Or is it supposed to be, because it's like what they end up meaning is not like social media followers, because a lot of these dudes show up with guns and gear to support him. So followers in that sense means something more serious. But the fact that the guy's like, wow, he's got 500 followers is like, in real life, if the Joker had if the Riddler had like a Twitter account, I mean, even as this was happening, he would have a huge following. Look how he will follow Kanye West.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and that's, so I think that, well, and clearly that website, that page, his OnlyFans page, is clearly like, you know, an encrypted, like they only have it because they got it from the dark web, you know, where little addition, see, like these little things that they add in, I just loved so much. The comments section of the video, where they say, oh, it's an army surplus mask, you can get it at this thing. I was like, oh, this is awesome. It's so great.
By the way, I love this idea. So that scene between Batman and the Riddler in prison is so good, in part just because of the little freak out that he does. But I love the fake out where he keeps saying Bruce Wayne. And Batman, Robert Pattinson, right, without saying anything with words, conveys this like, oh my God, I'm busted. And then realizes that he isn't. And you see both realizations on his face without words. I thought that was such a cool bit of acting and a cool bit of like story.
I mean, to be able to non-verbally communicate those things with a Batman mask on is insane.
Yeah. How do you do it? It's just your eyes and like the way you set your jaw, basically.
I know. Yes.
And then the fact that the Riddler is like mad when he realizes that Batman hasn't figured out like the last piece of the puzzle. It's so funny to me. Like, I love this idea that he just assumed that Batman would figure it out. And when he hasn't figured it out, he's like, what? You didn't? It's not a sarcastic thing. It's not like oh, you didn't figure it out. It's like, hold up, wait, you didn't figure this out?
Yeah. And like the emotion that Paul Dano puts out in that scene is incredible, because you can see like everything comes out. We've been waiting the whole time to like see his face, hear him talk, whatever. And all of a sudden you're like, this guy is not mentally there, you know, like that. And not that we thought he was, but like the emotion that he portrays is so like uncontrollable. like it's just coming out of him where he's screaming at this wall and like heartbroken that he's not actually working with the Batman.
Yeah.
Pissed that he hasn't figured it out.
Yeah.
And like so he kind of, even though his plan has been very successful so far and is still going to be successful, it upsets him and it just drives him in like this really shocking and scary way.
Yeah, I think that like the emotional motivation behind his whole plot is actually what really carries it through. Like you could pick at the riddles or pick at the like coherence of the overall plan or something, but the fact is the reveal of how he felt about it is the surprising part. And that's cool. That's like a very cool, different thing. That's not a normal superhero thing.
I went to see this with our uncle and another guy from work, and who hated it, hated every minute of this movie. And he got up and left to like go to the concession stand or something during that scene.
Oh, that's tough.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And he keeps making like little comments to me about liking the Batman at work, being like, oh yeah, well, this guy liked the Batman. And I'm like, dude, you literally got up. It's the biggest, you missed the biggest reveal of the movie. And I still haven't even told him what happens.
You know what I think is,
I don't even care.
The movie, did you ever see the movie Oblivion, Tom Cruise movie?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's great,
rocks.
Right?
Yeah.
I saw that in theaters with our uncle. I know that our uncle was not the one who left the Batman at a critical scene.
No.
But our uncle, he left permanently, left the movie, left Oblivion right before like a huge game-changing twist in that movie, which is when Tom Cruise runs into another Tom Cruise. Yeah.
He got up and left and never came back.
Yeah.
First of all,
he was not my guy.
I brought up Oblivion the other day.
Yeah.
And I feel like he was like, oh yeah, I've seen that.
Well, it's been on HBO a ton, so maybe he caught up with it.
Maybe got it. That's
but
so
I remember
funny. Why did he leave?
There might have been a problem at the restaurant.
Oh, okay.
Because we might have been seeing it in the middle of the day. But I remember like him like getting up and leaving and then that happening. And I was like, go back.
Oh man, that's so funny. And completely on brand for him.
Yes,
like
that's true.
Not surprising at all. We should mention that. That's like a lot of stories with him. Yeah. So Riddler reveal, awesome stuff. Here's where we get to a problem for me.
Okay.
I understand the idea that we are showing these radicals lose step with their ideals because they become extreme and can't see the main issues anymore. Mm-hmm. If your whole thing is corruption, rich people being stepped on by the rich, what possibly drives you to place bombs in a seawall that is going to affect the people on the ground, the regular day people, not rich people? So is that just the point, that he's lost track of his ideals?
Well, it's that one, it's back to that Killmonger effect we're talking about, right? Where it's like nobody can crack that nut yet. Like everybody creates interesting, compelling villains with coherent ideologies, and then they can't write their way out of the problem. So I haven't heard anyone yet give me like a compelling reason why that aligns with the Riddler's goals. Because it doesn't. But maybe someone has I'm happy to hear an interpretation of it. But yeah, it's a little bit of a weird move, I guess.
So what I read online, which I didn't like go looking for an answer, but it came up in front of me, was that the seawalls were part of the renewal project, and that is why. But it's like, okay, but that sounds like
but
the
that seems like the
reasons
one
that they
good thing the
wanted
renewal
the
project
renewal.
did, right?
Yeah.
Like it seems
Yeah.
like that's the thing. Is it like this idea that the renewal project? I mean, if you're the Riddler, and you have to believe because you felt so deserted by the Waynes and the renewal program, you have to believe that all of it's a lie, right?
Right.
That maybe you do have to destroy like the one infrastructure program they managed to accomplish with $1 billion in like however long it's been, 20 years,
20,
right?
20 years, yeah.
Because it was like 2001. That was the people kept joking online about the fact that the Waynes were coming out of a screening of Shrek or like Zoolander.
Is that true?
Well, based on movies that were out around that time.
Oh.
So
I was
it's
like,
not,
no, because they don't even show it.
they don't show it. Luckily, we don't get any
Yeah.
of that. We don't have to watch the Waynes get killed again. But that's
my main issue with this. I loved it. I loved it. I knock certain aspects because it is 3 hours and it's too long. But I don't like tying in this whole mental illness thing with Martha Wayne. That feels like a nod to the fact that in Flashpoint, I think, Thomas, okay, so the premise is this. In Flashpoint, you know, Flash goes back in time and there's all this ripple effect where it changes all this stuff. For whatever reason, Bruce Wayne dies in the alley that night and Thomas Wayne becomes Batman.
Right.
Thomas Wayne is like way more brutal. And by the way, spoiler for that book, ends up shooting the Reverse Flash right in the head. And that's how the book ends. And it's awesome. It's like all of a sudden his head just explodes and Batman's behind him. And he's like, yeah, that's how you do it. You shoot him in the head. But in that storyline, Martha Wayne becomes the Joker.
Right. So this is otherwise this idea that Martha Wayne had, you know, BPD or whatever is not canonical.
I don't know.
I didn't even
For
know.
Me, I don't know.
Canonically, is she an Arkham? Is her maiden name Arkham?
Oh, I don't know that either.
Okay, so because that was all new information to me, and
I
so
like that. I thought it was to a certain extent.
I thought it was
like
I
like
the convenience of story. Yeah,
I like their old money shit. You know,
yeah.
like so that's cool. But I do not like the tie-in of this whole like because I don't think that John Turturro's motivations with Thomas Wayne like need to have that aspect. It could have just been the story about him showing up.
That part
Thomas Wayne
is
helping
tricky.
him.
I almost wish that Thomas Wayne had not been absolved by this movie, and maybe it could have. If you really want to make it so that Thomas Wayne definitely didn't do anything wrong with the murder of that reporter, fine, but maybe later. Like it just felt like I kind of wanted Bruce Wayne to sit with the possibility that
I'm fine with Thomas Wayne not even being like the best dude in the world. That's fine. But there's just too much of this.
Yeah. Well, it goes in too many circles. Like the El Rata thing and the Thomas Wayne thing, those storylines could use some trimming. I agree there. As much as I initially very loudly complained on social media when I learned that Batman was going to be 3 hours, but I actually had no issue with it because I just felt so absorbed by the story. And that felt new. I feel like I've been wrapped up in the story of like some TV shows in the last couple of years, but a lot of movies I've kind of, I don't want to like say this is Marvel's fault, but Marvel is they're so meta with all their narratives that you can't help but start to think about it intellectually, right? Like you can't help but separate yourself from the story and think about all of the many meta angles and winking references in Spider-Man No Way Home to the point where you're not as emotionally involved as you could have been. But with the Batman, it's like, there's literally none of that. Like there's no like meta text about this being the third Batman in recent years or anything like that. So it's just, you're just in it. And I guess I liked being in it for 3 whole hours. It was like meditating.
Sure. I can get down with that. I just don't think, let me put it this way. I don't think the story is it gets so convoluted towards the end
Yeah.
that I'm like I didn't need it to. It could have been 2 hours and 30 minutes and you could have removed all of this stuff.
Right.
That is my main issue, is just the amount of like, oh, didn't need that, need that. And again, the seawall thing is a real, what the hell is this at this point? At the end of this movie, you're like, Jesus Christ.
Now that you mention it, I get what you're saying. I really enjoyed the imagery of like Batman wading through the flood and like that overhead shot of him leading all the people following.
Imagery is basically the only reason that
that's
all
true.
exists.
The one scene in this movie that made me tear up is when the mayor's orphaned son is the first person to reach for Batman's hand. I love that. I love that too. So much.
I did too. I loved all the stuff with the mayor's son. Like every time they connected eyes, I was like, oh God.
Yeah. No, that was really strong.
And the imagery was awesome. It was very silly. The whole cutting the wire thing. I understand that he was doing it to prevent like an electrocution kind of thing, when he jumps onto the box and cuts the wire and falls into
and then
the
he gets electrocuted, but then he's fine.
Yeah. That whole thing was very silly. The I really liked the next morning scene when he's like helping people get to safety, and he's talking about how like before I was all darkness and now it needs to be brought into the light. Like
very true detective.
Well, and the whole bit of like seeing him in the light, like helping these people, and the woman grabs his arm and doesn't want to let go as she's on the stretcher. I was like, yes, you're a hero.
Yeah. That was, you're right. That whole final sequence was really great.
So yeah, I mean, I think that as much as I have major issues with that whole bit, there's a lot that I liked. I just think that it's more like we couldn't have come up with a better thing for him to want to cause mass destruction. Like, it's like you couldn't have done it where you were going to do like 100 9/11s throughout the city, like at all the banks or something like that, you know?
Right.
Like,
yeah. There's definitely there's a little tweak missing there.
You know, like you couldn't have, or like I don't like that he's so anti the new mayor, because he's like, nothing's going to change. Mm-hmm. But it's like, but do you need to make sure that she gets executed over this? Like,
I liked the tension in there of like, you're not really sure how to feel about the mayor, because you're like, she does seem promising, but you just keep waiting for there to be some kind of reveal, and nothing ever comes. Right. Which isn't to say that it won't. So so let's just do our kind of final thoughts on the Batman.
It's the greatest Batman movie that's ever been made. Oh, I don't know.
I actually think it might be. Yeah, I think it might be. I kind of want to rewatch Batman Returns, because I remember that really profoundly affecting me as a kid. I think sort of like viscerally grossing me out in a lot of ways, but you know, I imagine it would be different as an adult.
My issue with those films is more just that, like, for the time that they were made, they are excellent. Mm-hmm. But like story-wise, we're doing a lot more now, as you know, in 2022. This is a story that,
right. Well, our whole visual storytelling has changed, where like you'll watch a movie from like even the 90s and further back, and like someone will get out of their car and walk all the way into a building, and you're like, what?
Yeah. Well, but also, like, I mean, you know, at that time, like for me, I really like when shit is immersed in the comic book stuff, because like there's so much there and there's so many great stories, and I feel like this movie does that. not with anyone specific. I mean, obviously there's a lot of year one, there's a lot of the long Halloween.
Right. It's that they do this pastiche of different comic book elements now, whereas you're right, in those older comic book
It was
adaptations,
all, yeah.
they would blow it off completely. They would
Yeah.
very intentionally not have any kind of, they would be like, well, what if it was completely different? You know, what if Mario was a real plumber in Brooklyn?
Yeah.
What if
exactly.
Bowser was Dennis Hopper?
Yeah. Boy, let's not get into that movie. Jesus. So the thing is that, I think that it's basically the Batman or the Dark Knight. And as far as, I don't know, maybe it's still the Dark Knight for me.
I think we can say they're tentatively tied for first now. You know?
Oh yeah. Well, and also it's like I would literally watch Robert Pattinson beat the shit out of people for maybe 4 hours.
Oh, how funny. This is something that now, so I was saying, I think I texted you that Maggie Gyllenhaal and Peter Sarsgaard are the only couple in the world who can boast that both members of the marriage have been exploded in Batman movies. And not only that, it's the two best Batman movies.
That's true. That's true.
But like, I mean, not that Maggie Gyllenhaal and Peter Sarsgaard are in need of anecdotes at cocktail parties, but what a great one to start with. Did you know that my husband and I are the only two people who are a married couple who've both been blown up in Batman movies?
The Peter Sarsgaard's one that every time I see him, I'm like, I just want you to do well because I like you.
Yeah, it's true.
And then he shows up as the biggest dirtbag in the world in this movie and immediately gets horribly murdered.
Yeah,
which I thought was very, very funny. And oh man, how scary is the Riddler when he is about to, in the first scene with the mayor. Then when he's sitting in the car waiting for Peter Sarsgaard to come out and you just kind of see him breathing in the car. Yeah. It's like, boy, you are fucking terrifying. And I think it's just because it's really real. It's so real. You know?
I love that when the first time you see the Riddler and he's just you kind of just see his eyes in the dark. The eyes of his mask in the dark. That was awesome. Yeah. I was I was freaked
scary.
Out.
It was so scary and so just I think that they did such a good job with him. And that's why I'm like, don't do the Joker. Do other characters. You guys could kill some other characters here.
No, I'll support that stand. No new Jokers.
No new Jokers. That's the hashtag for this show.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, now we've got all the branding
done. For everything.
Yeah. Okay, cool. All right, well, so we'll be back for episode 2 where we're talking about Spider-Man No Way Home. And, like and subscribe and tell us in the comments what else you want us to talk about.
Yeah, dude, we're real YouTubers.
I haven't forgotten how to do this.
Man, next time we set up, I'm going to have all my comic book stuff behind me and everything. I'll look, I could even do it right here. With all these guys right behind me. Yeah,
perfect. Yeah. I'll try to have more than just absolutely nothing behind me next time.
Don't forget to ring the bell for notifications.